Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining in for today's webinar presentation. Today is day one of a two-day webinar series looking at the Owner's Accounting or HOA portal for RoomKeyPMS. Today's topic will be focusing in on the HOA setup inside that portal. So to get us started for today, let's take a look at the outline for our presentation. We'll start with some introductions. Then we'll dive right into our topic and define what is an HOA hotel. We'll look at how to manage HOA settings, how to manage owners and units, and we'll also look at an owner's portal access tool that can be distributed out to owners. We'll look at when you can start using these different tools, and we'll wrap up today's presentation with a summary and Q&A. So our introductions for today, my name is Tasha LeClaire. I'm a trainer and implementation specialist with RoomKeyPMS. Joining me today, I do have our Director of Customer Experience, Mr. William Tam. I'll be leading today's presentation and the demonstrations on screen, and William will oversee the chat and Q&A features inside the Zoom meeting. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can go ahead and click on the Q&A button in the Zoom meeting and you can ask a question. William will be able to answer, and any questions that are not answered via text, we can use those in our summary at the end of our presentation today. A couple more things about today's webinar. It is being recorded and a copy of the recording will be made available on our support website. If you've registered for this two-day series, you will get notifications when each presentation is available, usually within 24 hours of the event. For those of you joining our live presentation today, you will have a webinar survey at the end of our presentation, just a short 2-3 quick questions there. If you do have any suggestions for future presentations, we're happy to accommodate those and incorporate those into future webinar presentations. Speaking of future presentations, we do have our next topic announced for next month in October, and that will be wholesalers. So jumping into our topic for today, what is an HOA hotel? We have a bit of a lengthy definition here, but let's go through it together. An HOA hotel is comprised of guest rooms or units that are independently owned by one or more private owners. You may also be familiar with terms like timeshare, vacation rental, condo, anything like that where the individual units are owned by someone other than the hotel itself. Now, the hotel and these owners have an established contract to allocate revenue and expenses monthly as managed by the hotel. So the hotel is doing all that management. So to break down this definition or to kind of visualize this a little bit better, when you have a hotel that is a timeshare or has units that are owned, you may have all of those units there, and then you might have different types of owners that have purchased that room and sometimes occupy it, but when the room is unoccupied, the hotel is selling those room night on behalf of the owner. So you could have an independent owner, a person like you or myself, or someone in the community who owns a unit. You could have an owner who lives abroad, someone who is outside of the country where the hotel is located. That would be considered a foreign owner. And there are some settings that we can accommodate for them when we look at the setup of that type of owner. You can have a unit that is owned by two or more people or a group of people, and they split revenue based off of an owner percentage. And you can also have a unit that is owned by an organization or a company rather than a single individual. Now, regardless of how these units are owned, revenue is allocated and expenses are allocated on a monthly basis. So that is divvied out by the hotel itself. And typically what you'll see is that any revenue that is generated by that owner's unit is allocated back to that individual owner or the company or that group of owners. Now, for some cases, you may have a revenue pool or pooling that allows the owner to first collect all the revenue together first, and then the revenue is evenly distributed back to the owners, subject to pooling factors or expense factors. So that's also something that our software can accommodate. All of these different scenarios, we'll look at a few of them in today's setup and configuration presentation. Then when it comes to the pooling and revenue distribution, that will be part of tomorrow's presentation. So now that we have a definition, let's look at how to manage these settings inside our HOA portal. And the first thing that you need to do is actually access that portal. So to access the portal, you will need to use a computer with access to the internet in order to navigate to one of these links. Now, depending on how your database is built with RoomKey, your RoomKey trainer or onboarding specialist will let you know which URL or link you will use to access your HOA portal for your hotel. Now, you don't need to have RoomKey open or logged in, but you do need to have a RoomKey clerk ID, and that is the login name and password that you'll use to access this HOA portal. Now, in addition to having a RoomKey clerk ID, that clerk ID does require a specific permission. It is found in the operations section, and it is called permission 1520 HOA access. So if you have a clerk ID and you're trying to log into this portal, you may get a notification telling you that you don't have access is not granted. If that message ever appears, it means that you need to enable this permission on your clerk ID. You can do that yourself, or you may need to have a manager or supervisor do that for you. So once you are able to log into the HOA portal, the first thing that you'll be doing is setting up taxes. In RoomKey HOA portal, we have a variety of different types of taxes that we can set up. So before we look at the setup, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of define the different types of taxes that you may encounter or may set up for your HOA portal. The first one is just called tax. This is the one that we're most familiar with. And any taxes that are set up and charged to an owner, they're usually charged as part of services that are provided to the owner. So for example, if there is a maintenance requirement in the unit, the hotel would have their maintenance team take care of that maintenance item and then charge that maintenance service with associated taxes back to the owner. Another type of tax that we do have is called collected tax. This is tax on the room revenue that appears as a positive amount that is paid out to the owner. So when the owner looks at their statement, they would see the collected tax as an amount being remitted to them at the end of the month. Now, the owner is expected to remit this tax to the government when they file their taxes at the end of the year. Now, the third type of tax that we have that we can set up in the HOA portal is the withholding tax. And this is similar to collected tax, but it's specifically for foreign owners. So again, it is room revenue tax that appears on the owner statement, but withholding tax will actually appear as a negative amount or an expense on that owner's statement. And again, that owner is expected to remit tax to the government on behalf of the owner. So let's take a look at how we can set up taxes inside the HOA portal. And we'll also be able to see in this video where you can define the tax type, whether it's a tax, collected tax, or withholding tax. This video is about 1:30. Let me go ahead and start it here. So you're going to navigate to the taxes section, and you're going to click new to add a new tax. You can define the tax code and description and the type, as well as the tax amount. And if you're adding multiple taxes, you can click Save and New, and that will save that initial tax and allow you to create a second one. Here we're going to go through, and now we're going to create a collected tax. So that'll be added to the description here. And below the description, this is where I change the type to collected tax. And again, I'll add in the amount. I'll do one more, so I'll click Save and New. And this time I'll create a withholding tax. So again, I enter in the code, the description, and right below the description is the type where I will select withholding tax, and I can enter that amount as well. When you're all done, you can click Save, and that will now bring you back to a list of all of the taxes. On the right-hand side, you can delete taxes. I'm not going to do that. Let me just go ahead and cancel there. Or on the left-hand side, you can edit a tax. So for example, let me go in and change the tax amount over to 9. So taxes can be set up pretty straightforward right from those configuration settings inside the HOA portal. Now, the next thing that we're going to set up are the transaction codes. Before we look at the setup of it, there are some definitions that we're going to go through as well, because there's quite a variety of types of transactions, codes that you can create inside the HOA portal. The first type is an expense transaction. This charges the owner, and any items that are charged as an expense will appear as a negative amount on the owner's statement. So again, that maintenance fee, if you perform some maintenance in an owner's unit, you can expense that back to the owner, and that will appear as a negative amount that the owner owes to the hotel. The next type of transaction code is a room revenue transaction. This is revenue that is collected from guests that stay in the owner's unit while the owner is not occupying it. The hotel may split or have some sort of revenue split with the owner themselves, and this room revenue appears as a positive amount on the owner's statement. Every hotel that uses our HOA portal must have at least one room revenue transaction code set up in order to record revenue and remit those back to the owner at the end of the month. The next type of transaction code is other revenue. This could be for any other charges that you may charge a guest and then remit or profit share with the owners. So this could be service revenue that the hotel provides to the guest and then splits that revenue with the owner. And again, other revenue, just like room revenue, will appear as a positive amount on the owner's statement. The next type of transaction is a payment, and this is also a required transaction code because it is used to record any payments that are made by the owner to the hotel. So if the expenses that you are charging to an owner in any given month are more than the room revenue that is being brought in by that unit, the owner would owe money back to the hotel, and you need to record that using a payment transaction code. The last type of transaction code is not as common, but it is also a different type that's here, and that is the credit card commission. This is used in the event that the charges that are incurred by processing credit card, if that charge is split between the hotel and the owners. So if you do pass on a portion or all of the processing fees for credit cards, if you pass on those processing fees to the owner, you will need to create a credit card commission transaction code. Now, given all these different types of transaction codes, I do have a short video here. It's about 2 minutes in length that's going to show how to set up a transaction code, how you can edit or manage the transaction codes and see them in a full list. This video does not show every type of transaction code listed here, but it does give a couple of examples of the most common ones. So let me go ahead and start the video. Great. So to access this area, you're going to configuration settings and select transaction codes. That will show you a list of all of the active transaction codes, and you can click new to create a new one, like this room revenue transaction code. I'll select the type room revenue, and if there's any default amount, I can add that. And at the bottom, I can also add if there's any taxes that are applicable, and click Save. When a transaction code is created, you can continue to click New to create new transaction codes. So this is an example of an expense that is being created. And again, if there's a default amount or any applicable taxes, you can add those as well and click Save. I think I've got one more example here of a new transaction code that we're going to create as a maintenance fee. And this one is also an expense, but this time I do have a default maintenance fee amount. So if that is a default amount that's charged every month to unit owners, you can set that default as well. Great. So once you have transactions, you can delete them. In this case, I'm just going to cancel there. Or if the transaction has been used at least once, you will have the option to deactivate a transaction code. In some cases, they may not be able to be deleted if they are associated with another fee. But when a transaction code is deactivated, it'll appear here on a list of deactivated transaction codes, and you have the ability to reactivate a transaction code. Let me just head back here. You also have the ability to edit these properties on transaction codes. So you can click that edit button on the left and edit any details. Click save or cancel to erase those changes. So quite a lot of setup can be done in that transaction codes area. Just a reminder that you'll want to create those required transaction codes like room revenue and payment, expense. You can have multiple types of expense codes like we saw in that video. It could be for maintenance or management fees, anything like that. So it is very likely that you'll have multiple types of expenses, and other revenue and credit card commission are optional depending on what type of services and charges you remit back to your owners. The next thing that you're going to set up for your HOA portal is your property and statement settings. We've got a couple of things, a couple of steps that you'll go through here. The first thing that you'll set up is the property detail. Now, much of this will be set up in advance for you by your implementation specialist, but these include things like the hotel address and contact info, fax or email address for the hotel, but you can edit this information at any time. These details do show up on the statement that is remitted to your owners on a monthly basis. The next group of settings, these can include the account settings, settings for importing revenue, pooling revenue, if that is an option for your property, as well as taxes and fees. The next section is miscellaneous owner and statement settings. This is where you can add custom verbiage and manage any items that the owners would see on their statement at the end of the month. And then the last couple of fields are just notes and advisory. This is just more custom verbiage that can be communicated to the owners. So at the end of the month, when you submit your statements, there can be a note or an advisory email message sent to owners that lets them know that their statement is now available to be viewed in their owner's portal. So again, that is just custom verbiage that you can customize for your property. So I have a short video here that will show us how you can go through and edit all of this information in one set location in the HOA portal. So here I'm going to start and click on Configuration Settings and the Edit button. This first section are those property details, so you can update information like telephone, fax, or contact info for the hotel. You can click Save if that is all that you need to update, or you can scroll down a little bit further and that'll bring you to the settings. So here we can set settings for pooling revenue, the fiscal first month for statements for the year, as well as selecting any management and withholding fees and tax. These are settings that are usually configured subject to the contract you have with owners. As I scroll down a little bit further, this is where I can add that custom verbiage and settings for statements that the owner would see at the end of the month. When they have a balance owing, I can add custom verbiage for each of these sections as well. Down below, I have yes and no selections available to tell if I want to show these details or hide these details on the owner's statement. Lastly, here is the note and advisory custom verbiage that you can add if you'd like to add any monthly notes, notifying your owners of any changes or updates. And then the statement advisory is letting the owner know when their statement is available to view. Anytime you make changes to these settings, at the very top, you'll scroll back up and click Save. So some pretty straightforward operations there that allow you to edit, update your information, and save those changes. Any changes that you make will be applicable for the current month moving forward. It will not affect any past revenue or statements in the past. Now let's take a look at how we can add and manage those owners and units. The first thing that we're going to look at is how to add owners. And I want to take a moment here just to define a couple different types of owners that we've maybe already hinted at a little bit earlier in this presentation. When you are adding owners in the HOA portal, you will be asked for the first name and last name. And these are the details that you'll enter to create a profile for an individual owner. But when we go through and add an owner, you will also have the option to use a company name instead of a first name, last name. You will use this option if you're creating a profile for a company owner. So if it's an organization with its own company name and contact information, that is the option that you'll use. You'll select use company name instead of first name, last name. I've got a short video here that's going to show us the process of adding an owner. So we're going to start from the configuration settings and select owners. Here it'll show you a list of your existing owners, and you can click the new button to add a new owner. You'll add in the first name, last name, and contact information for that owner. And here at the bottom, it's very important to add an owner email address, exactly as typed. Do not add any additional spaces before or after. I'm going to click Save and New. I'm going to create a new profile, but this time I'm going to select Use Company Name. I've entered my company name, contact information, and again, here at the bottom, you want to enter the email address exactly as written. When you're done, you can click Save. And here you'll see a list of those new owners with the option to delete. If you're not deleting an owner, you can edit the owner on the left-hand side. You can edit any details there as needed. And if you have any inactive owners on the right-hand side, you can click Show Inactive Owners, and any of those inactive owner profiles would be listed there. Pretty straightforward to be able to add owners depending on if it's an organization or if it's an individual owner. Now that we have added owners, let's take a look at attaching an owner to a unit. Now, when we go through this this process, not only will we attach an owner to a unit, but we're also going to be setting up some settings for how revenue is allocated. We can set up pooling and expense factors, which are optional, and we can also set up any management or reoccurring fees. So the first thing that we'll look at is the unit detail. And like I said, this is where we can set up how revenue is imported or allocated from that unit. And we'll have the option to do revenue and expense pooling. The next thing that we'll do is actually attach an owner profile to a unit. We can customize the start date, the taxes and fee settings, and this is also where we can add multiple owners. So if you have 2 or more people that own a single unit and split revenue between 2 or more owners, that's the section where we'll be able to do that. And we do have an example of attaching 2 or more owners in the video we'll show here. We'll also be able to set up occupancy fees. These are fees per occupancy type. So whether it is the owner staying in their own unit and any fees like maintenance or housekeeping fees that are incurred during that stay, or it could be a guest stay, some third-party guest, or it could be a guest of the owner. So a couple different types there. You will need to set up any occupancy fees that are associated with this unit and any reoccurring fees that are associated with the unit. So these could be monthly fees that could be applied as either a flat amount or some sort of percentage of the revenue that is collected throughout that month. So reoccurring fees, this is usually your management fee that is applied by the hotel. So if the hotel takes a 50% management fee from the revenue that is collected throughout the month, we would set that up as a reoccurring fee. So now that we've defined some of the steps that we'll be looking at when we attach an owner to a unit, I've got a video here. It's one of our longer videos, so it's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but it's going to take us through these steps and show us a couple of different functionalities there. So we'll start again from configuration settings. This time we'll select units. This is going to show you a list of all of the units in the hotel. And on the left-hand side, you can click View to now edit a unit. This is where you can add in your pooling if they are revenue is pooled as well as expense. Then when it comes to the owner section, you can add Edit and select Owner. This is where you can attach an owner profile, enter the start date, any tax settings, and minimum check amount. Now, when we add an owner, we're also going to add management fees. So if there's any management fees associated with this owner's unit, and when you're done, you can go back to the unit. And this is where you can set up your, or you'll see your owner has been added, and you can set up your occupancy fees. So here I'm just adding in an expense per stay. That's just a $20 cleaning fee. And then I have a reoccurring fee that's going to be assigned as a maintenance fee. And this is going to be calculated as a percentage of the revenue. So I've added one of each, but you can add multiple. When you go back to your unit list, you can see that a unit is owned because it'll have a number of owners listed in that owners column. When you click view, you can add a second or third owner just by repeating that same process. You're going to select the owner profile. When you add a second owner, you do need to enter in the unit share, and you'll need to modify the unit share of the existing owner as well in order to add that second owner, and click save. When you're adding that second owner, don't forget to add any management fees at the same time as well. So I'm just adding in that expense fee as well. Perfect. And now I can head back to the unit list. Great. When you have two or more owners, that'll be listed in the owners column when you're looking at the list of units. So pretty quick overview there showing the process that is used to attach an owner to a unit and some of the other settings that you'll want to set up at the exact same time. So whether you're adding those unit details, occupancy fees, or reoccurring fees, you're doing that when you are attaching the owner to the unit. Now there is another function that we can use to manage units, and that's the ability to remove a unit. So when you have a hotel or timeshare or HOA property where all of the units are owned, it is possible that some portion of those units are not owned by independent owners. They may simply be regular guest rooms. In that case, we'll want to remove that unit from the HOA portal. In order to do that, I have a short video here, the shortest of today. Just 30 seconds will show you how to remove a unit in the event that it is not part of the HOA program, but still an actual hotel guest room. I'm going to go ahead and click here. We'll start from configuration settings and select units. You'll go down to the unit itself, and on the far right-hand side, you'll select remove. When you remove a unit, it disappears from this list, and you can show inactive units on the top right-hand corner, and you can always add that unit back into the HOA. So if I go back here, I can now see that room 208 is back in my list of active units for my HOA program. So very customizable portal that allows you to customize to suit how your business operates and manages those different owned units versus regular guest rooms in your property. So we've talked a lot about the HOA portal and what it looks like from the management point of view of setting up and adding owners and attaching units and things like that. But we do have a second portal, and that is called the Owners Portal. Now, this is a portal or access that is permitted for the owners of those units to log in and view their owner's statement. They can also view some additional details through this portal. Now, in order for an owner to access a portal, they will need to register and they need to access one of these portal logins. Again, when you are setting up your HOA system for your hotel, your onboarding or implementation specialist will let you know which portal your owners can use. When they access this portal or click on the link, they'll be brought to a login page where they'll be asked for an email address and password. If this is the first time that they are accessing this web page, they don't have a password, so they actually need to register for the portal first. So they're going to click this little link in the bottom left corner to register. They'll be prompted to enter in their email address and request password. So what the portal is going to do automatically is send a temporary password to that email address for that owner to use to then log into the owner's portal. So once that email has been sent, the owner would go to their email address, log in, check their inbox. They might have to check their spam folder too, just in case, but they would be able to collect their password and then they can enter their email address and password into the portal login. When an owner logs in, the first thing that they're going to see is their statement info. So a page very similar to this, where it's going to show the most recent statement for that owner or for that unit. It's going to show only the information that is permitted based off of the property settings that we've set up earlier. So in this case, this is only showing expenses and taxes. It's not showing any additional information about guest stays or guest info or occupancy info, strictly the bare minimum or summary version of this statement. Now from this portal, the owner can click print owner statement. They can print a copy of this statement and a PDF copy there. If this owner owns 2 or more units at this hotel, in the top left corner, they can actually flip through the different units that they own. So this is looking at unit 1, but they obviously have multiple units. So I just click on that drop-down menu and select a different unit. They can also look at different invoices by date, subject to settings by the property. So the property may only allow owners to look at the current statement, or they may only let them look at one statement previous. So the current statement and last month's statement. So those settings are actually controlled by the property, but the owner themselves, they could flip through these different selections here as well. Now, if this email address is used by multiple owners, then the owner would also see this other selection here where they can change the property owner. So it is possible that you have a family of owners. They all use the same email address, but they all own separate units. That is a possible structure that they could still use this owner's portal access to look at their specific statement information. So lots of flexibility here for the owner's portal. Not only can they view their statement information, subject to whichever unit or owner they are, but they can also change information, primarily the address information. So if the owner clicks change address here from their owner's portal, they change their address, that will automatically update in the HOA portal for the property. So that is a great way to keep up to date with your owners, especially if you're quite a large property with multiple owners. It can be difficult to stay on top of all of the updated contact information. This is really helpful for the owner to manage that themselves anytime they need to change their contact details. The other thing that the owner can change, of course, is their password, and that's the password that they use to log into this portal. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, when the owner registers for their portal access, they get a pre-assigned password. I do encourage you to let your owners know that they can change their password as soon as they log in for the first time. That will ensure that the password is secure and unique to them and prevent anyone from accessing it if they get a hold of that email that is sent from the portal. Thanks. So now that we've seen a bunch of different configuration items, big question here is when you can start using these tools or implement them at your property. Right now, HOA is not available to all of our users. You will need to contact our inside sales manager, Margot. Her contact information is displayed on screen here. You'll need to contact her to sign up for HOA if you would like to implement that to manage your owned units at your property. She will also recommend some onboarding training, so you can have one-on-one training with implementation specialists here at RoomKey that will help walk you through many of those configuration settings to make sure that they are customized for your contracts that you have with your HOA owners. So to wrap up our day 1 of HOA setup, I'm going to open up the floor to see if there are any questions. Perfect. So I actually have a question that was entered in here. The question is, can one user be allowed to view other statements? So the answer for this one, the owner can only view statements that are associated with their owner profile. So for example, I've attached an owner profile to one unit. That's the only unit that I would be able to see statements for. If I have my profile attached to multiple units, I may own all 100% or 50% or less of a unit, but I would still be able to see that statement, the full statement for that unit. Hopefully that answers that question there. I'm going to leave the floor open just a little bit longer, see if there are any other questions. Oh, right. So this is, in addition to that single question, this is a little bit more to it. So, so owner A owns unit 1, owner B owns unit 2, but owner C owns unit 3 and takes care of all unit statements. Okay, so in that case, owner C, B, and A would all have to register with the same email address. So if owner A, B, and C all use the same email address, then they would be able to log in. Owner C would be able to log in with that email address and see all statements for all 3. Otherwise, if owner A, B, and C all have separate email addresses, owner C will need to log in with a separate email address, view one statement, log out, log in with a separate email address, view one statement, log out, and then log in with the third email address, view the statement, and log out. We might practice with that a little bit more in tomorrow's presentation. And I think that you've added a really great summary here, Tanisha, where you said, in summary, it is the email address that controls the access to viewing statements. Not necessarily the profile, that's correct. So you would have to have the same email address on each profile for owner A, B, and C in order for C to access and see all of the statements in one login. I don't see any other questions coming in. So let's go ahead. I'm going to shut down our webinar for today. If there are any residual questions, I will look at adding those into the support article when this presentation is published within 24 hours. So thank you everyone for attending. I hope you have a wonderful day.